Hello guys, welcome back to ESENtaxa, Andrea Papito here. This is a very particular video because in this video I'm going to finally clarify the famous Italian social contribution that needs to be paid in general cases, but in particular in the case of the Inpatriate regime. So stay tuned because here we have something that we need to understand a little bit in details. There is something to be analyzed a little bit more in deep. And I hope you will find some good information from this video. I hope you will gather the maximum knowledge for this specific topic. And I will put in the description below the video also the timing, so you can skip straight to the topics that you really need to understand, if you really wish to focus on it. Okay, so I display here the name of the institution that it's in charge of collecting all the money about the social security. So basically, it's in common in every country of the world. We have to pay our social security for our future pension. Okay. In Italy, the institution is called INPS, which is the Italian National Social Security Institute. It's basically the one that provides the welfare in Italy. So provides the pension, also other kind of paycheck in case for disabilities or for other kind of reasons. Okay, let's focus on the general rule of paying the social contribution. So I'm going to show you first the general rule. So regardless the Inpatriate regime, okay? So in Italy, we can classify three specific cases. The first one is when you are performing an activity recognized from the public, from the Italian state. All those activities that are officially registered in a public registry, which in Italian called Albo, and those activities I'm referring to lawyers, accountants, architects or engineers. So in case you need to, for example, build a bridge, of course you have to be certified in the kind of job, because it's if you build a bridge for the public roads, of course you have to build it in a proper way. So your profession has to be registered in a specific registry, and you have to provide an official public exam to be qualified as an engineer, for example. I'm just giving you an example. So all those kind of profession officially recognized from the Italian state, they pay their own type of social contribution. Okay, so most likely if you're a foreigner, you don't really fall in this category. So it's not so important for you, but just for you to understand how is the structure of the social contribution. The second type is the social contribution for general consultant. If you're a classical self-employed, you provide consultancies of any kind of subject, but it not belongs to any of the previous type of work that we have just said, then the amount of money to pay for the social contribution is on percentage. What does it mean? It means that if you don't earn nothing, you don't pay nothing in social contribution. So there is nothing to be paid regardless your revenue. Okay, in some countries this is a mandatory. In some other countries they follow these rules, so only in percentage. In Italy it depends. In Italy, if you are a general consultant, you don't have to pay a fixed amount of money per year, but you pay this percentage, which is today in 2021, and maybe in 2022 would be quite the same. It's almost 26%, which is quite big if you think about it. So Italy, it's really charged a lot from social contribution and pension. This is for general cases. And then we have the third case. The third case is when you pay a fixed amount of money of social contribution. Okay? And this category in Italian is called Commercianti / Artigiani. So this is the name. If you want to looking for this kind of status, you can also type on Google by yourself, and this is the Italian word that you have to put on Google. So to search by yourself, and maybe if you like, you can search other information about it. You can investigate a little bit more, because here I'm just going to give you a general vision, but there are some specificities, some kind of situation where this amount of money can be reduced or is a little bit different. And the previous one, the percentage, it's called Gestione Separata. So those are the two Italian words to discriminate from paying the social security in percentage only and pay the social security with a fixed amount of money per year minimum plus a percentage. Indeed, the Commercianti Artigiani situation is like, Commercianti is like be a trader, and you trade some goods and services. Artigiani is like artisans. So if you're like, let's say, an artist, you build something with woods or with metal, you do something like this, for example, I'm just giving a random example, you fall in this category, okay? So the Commercianti pays minimum per year 3,800, around 800 euro, 800 euro, if your income reaches almost 16,000. If you pass this threshold, for the income above this threshold, you pay 24.09. So up to almost 16K, you pay this fixed amount of money. Regardless, even if you earn €1, you pay this 3,840 euro, okay? Up to this 16K almost. Above the 16K, you pay 24, okay? Artisan is basically the same amount of money to pay, but instead of 24.09, it's just 24. So it doesn't really change a lot. And another thing that we need to be considered is that the social contribution in Italy have a threshold, above which is not due at all. So if your revenue passes 103,000 euro and something, you are not obliged to pay any extra social contribution, okay? So this is the general rule in Italy. First case, specific jobs with their own social contribution, general consultancy with this 26% of Gestione Separata, and the case of Commercianti Artigiani type, which has this fixed amount of money to pay plus this 24% above 16K of revenue. Now, the question is, how do you understand in which one of the category you fall? Of course, this depends of your type of activity. So in Italy, the type of activity is defined with a code called ATECO code. So based on your activity, so when you go to your accountant, you'd say to your accountant, okay, I'm going to describe my activity to my accountant. Very good. And the accountant understands in the Italian database, in the Italian, let's say, ATECO database, which is your code that matches with your description. And based on your code, he knows in which type of social contribution you have to be related with. Okay, this is how it works. Okay, now let's check how we calculate the social contribution or the pension contribution in combination with the Inpatriate regime. Because as you know, guys, the Inpatriate regime has this huge amount of deduction that reduce your imposable income, but this imposable income, this is imposable income for tax purpose. Here we want to understand which is the amount of money to take into account when we need to calculate your social contribution mandatory to pay. And the problem here is that there is no clarification from the INPS itself. So here is the problem. The INPS didn't yet exactly clarify how to calculate the amount of money, and a lot of accountants, they just try to interpret the law based on the existing law on the general cases. So there are some accountants that says, no, we have to calculate the social contribution on the global income, so before apply the deduction of the Inpatriate regime. And some other accountants that say, no, the imposable income, the fiscal imposable income is the same for the social contributions, which means you first deduct 90% of your revenue, or 70%, depends if you're located in the south or the north of Italy, and then you apply the social contribution. So the INPS will be calculated on your reduced amount. For example, if you earn 100,000 euro per year and you relocate in the south of Italy, you deduct 90% of it, which means that only 10% of your revenue, only 10,000 euro of your revenue will be imposable, also for social contribution. So some accountant says this is the scenario that we have to follow based on the general rules. Some other accountant says no, this is just a fiscal benefit only on tax. It's just a tax benefit, but the social contribution has to pay entirely. What is the truth? So what I did is the following. I simply download the Italian tax software the Italian tax agency provides a software. This software is used by all the accountants in Italy to transmit the Italian tax file return at the end of the year for each taxpayer. So it's an official software. So in the software, you can understand exactly how the things works, which is the amount of money that appears in the certain kind of field, because when you put your revenue, the software automatically calculates a certain kind of percentages, certain kind of taxes to pay, and also tells you where is the amount to consider for the amounts to take into account for the calculation of the social contribution. And let's see what I discovered. First, we have to consider the type of income. So in an Inpatriate regime, we have basically 4 types of income that you have to take into account. The first one is when you're an employee. So your employer pays you a salary. This is employee type. Then we have the autonomous work or freelance work under the regime of royalties. Okay, so you're just giving some intellectual properties under commissions, and this is a royalties type, and this is excluded totally from the INPS, from the social contribution. So here there is no problem at all. And then we have the autonomous work or freelance work for general works like general consultant, and then the same thing, the same type of income, but under the form of entrepreneur. Because in Italy, the Italian fiscal system makes the difference between a normal freelancer and a freelancer as entrepreneur. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Let's start from an employee type. And the employee type, I found out on the Italian social contribution website. Unfortunately, it's in Italian, but here I'm here to translate you. Let me zoom a little bit this screenshot. As you can see here, this page, then I will put in the description below all these pages, and you can translate it on Google, of course. This says that your employer pays you 33% of social contribution, of which 23.81 at his own charge, which means that you're not this is not part of the Inpatriate regime, of course, and only 9.19% appears in your payslip. It means that only 9.19% of social contribution is withheld from your salary. Okay, so you pay this amount of social contribution on your salary, and this is calculated on your global amount. So you first calculate this, and then you apply the Inpatriate regime. How do I know this? Because if we move to this software, that's it. So this is the software for, if you see here, there is employee type, lavoro dipendente in Italian is employee type. And as you can see, let me put myself somewhere else places, right? And if you define, for example, an income of 80,000 euro, and you put it in this first line, which is I read the instruction, and there is the point to put the revenue. Then you define certain other, how many days per year, and basically the software automatically tells you exactly where is the amount of money to be taken into account for the calculation of the social contribution. And here there is no deduction. Okay, let's move now on. Okay, we said that now the royalties, they are not part of the social contribution. They are not, the social contribution are not paid during the royalties, so there is nothing to worry about it here. And we can jump straight to the third category, or well, the third and the fourth category, the one that I was telling you before, the general autonomous work, which is in Italian called reddito lavoro autonomo, versus the type of income, which is called reddito d'impresa in Italian, which is sort of entrepreneur type of income. What does it mean? It means that if you act like an entrepreneur, if you make like complex actions to build a business, such as selling services and goods online, can be a classical entrepreneur project, then you are a freelancer, you are self-employed, but your income is classified as entrepreneur type, which is in Italian is translated reddito d'impresa. And you fall in one of those two categories still based on your Ateco code. So the Ateco code not just only tells you which is the amount of social contribution that you have to pay in general cases, either in percentage or in fixed amount, but also tells you which is the category. So if you are autonomous work or freelancer versus entrepreneur type of income or reddito d'impresa. I'm focusing on this difference, because this difference in the software that I have downloaded tells you exactly how to calculate the social contributions. Let's start with the autonomous work. So if I move to the autonomous work software, okay, so here I just select lavoro autonomo, in Italian, autonomous work. I select here Inpatriate Regime, which is the drop-down list, is the number 4. I've just set up one ATECO code, activity code here, that most likely is just an autonomous work, not entrepreneur type. And I put here the description about it. So this comes automatically. So every time you see this blue-gray field, this means that the calculation is automatically done from the software. And okay, I just put it here, the same amount of money as an employee type, 80,000. The software gives me 80,000 as a total of my revenue. And then the second part of the screenshot that I'm going to show you, it happens that the software here goes to 8,000. It remains 8,000 also on the second line. So somehow the software is gonna tell to your accountant that needs to transmit your tax file return, look, that this 80,000 euro needs to be deducted first with the Inpatriate regime. Okay, I use the 90% deduction because I'm assuming that this person is moving to south of Italy, okay? And what does it mean? That if we go here, this label RE25 in the social contribution, Italian social contribution website, institute website, we have explained exactly the rules that says RE25 is the place that we have to take into account to calculate the social contribution. So what does it mean? It means that when you are an autonomous work, not working as an entrepreneur type, your social contribution is calculated after you have applied the Inpatriate regime deduction. Okay? Simply as that. Let's see instead, when you perceive an income as an entrepreneur. Okay, I exactly made the same thing, same activity code, same description, same revenue. Okay? So here we are in another section here on this software area, and let's go down to the second screenshot. I have put here the Inpatriate regime. I'm going down, and you see 80,000 remains the same, but then also the entrepreneur type section tells me no, you have to reduce to 8,000. Makes sense. You apply the Inpatriate regime, but be careful, because this RF99, which is the name of the label where it appears the reduced amount, is not the one that we have to take into account for the social contribution. Unfortunately, for this case, is the RF63, the one that has to be taken into account for the calculation for the social contribution. And I went back to the website of the INPS, sorry, here, and that's it. I check the way, you see guys, the way the social contribution explain me the rules of calculating the amount from the social contribution itself, and appears that RF63 is the ones to be taken into account when it comes to the entrepreneur type of income. And this one, unfortunately, stays with 80,000 and not 8,000, okay? So here's the problem. And that's the reason why a lot of accountants, they are a little bit confused, and they just tells you, okay, maybe you have to go with the, we have to calculate with the lower after the deduction. Some other tells you no, before the deduction, because simply the software tells it's a little bit confusing, because it's weird that there is this discrimination between those two type of income. To be honest, I don't know if this was a mistake from the parliament or from the government. They didn't realize it, or somebody that developed the software make these mistakes. But basically, is the only official things we have so far. So up until the moment, we don't have real clarifications. You have to have these things in mind. This picture, you have to have a consultant with your accountant, and your accountant has to tell you exactly which the best way to follow for him and based on your type of activity. So as far as understood, the safest way to apply the Inpatriate regime is to go for employee type. We know exactly the rules is clear. If you're an entrepreneur business type, you have to calculate the social contribution or your entire amount, and then you are safe, because in case the INPS clarify this and in the clarification that says that you have to pay the social contribution on the entire amount, you already paid the entire amount, so there is no problem. But if you're an autonomous, you have to make sure that your accountant is confident with this and he wants to apply the social contribution on the reduced amount, because it's confident with the law, is confident with the interpretation of the law, and based on your type of activity, he thinks it's the right path to follow. And then in this case, you can, of course, not only have a huge discount in terms of taxes, but you will have also a huge discount in terms of social contribution. Be careful that whenever you need to apply the Inpatriate regime with an entrepreneur type of income, so with a reddit impresa, you have to make sure if it's really convenient for you, because as we see in the percentage, basically the social contribution for, let me go back to the first slide here. The social contribution for the Gestione Separata or Commercianti, Artigiani, these two types, it's quite big. So we have to verify if the Forfait regime is more convenient up to a certain kind of income. Okay, so if you have, in my humble opinion, if your income is bigger than 103,000K, 110K, 150K, then the Inpatriate regime always makes sense. But if you have an income then it's below 65,000 euro and your type of activity, your activity code tells you to have an income as an entrepreneur, maybe the Forfait regime, it makes a lot of more sense. Okay, so it's just a matter of having a consultancy on your specific case, makes a tax simulation based on your possible activity code, and when we have clear in mind the activity code, what type of social contribution you have to pay, if you are an autonomous work or an entrepreneur type, then we can make the simulation and you can understand if the Inpatriate regime makes sense for you or it makes more sense the Forfait regime. Keep in mind that the Inpatriate regime has more constraints. It's a little bit more expensive in terms of maintenance because the accountant has to deal with the real cost, while the Forfait regime is basically it's extremely easy to manage, is less expensive, you don't have the real cost but just forfeit cost, so it has to be evaluated and see which one is the best. And this is what we do. So first of all, you have the chance to subscribe to the Italian Tax Academy to learn about all the Italian fiscal system, to have a full picture. You have 5 hours online course, and then you can also apply for the tax simulation included in the package and a consultant with a former Italian tax agency inspector. Otherwise, you can just drop me an email at ESENtaxa@gmail.com. You can ask me about a specific consultancy, you can ask me about a specific tax simulation, and in order to basically help you to understand which is the best and the most suitable consultant for you. I hope I gave you the best I could. Basically, it's a tricky thing. I hope that the Italian government and the INPS, the Italian National Social Contribution Institute will clarify, finalize these things a little bit better. In the meantime, stay tuned on ESENtaxa, subscribe the channel, click the like button, and you will be always updated with the new Italian regulation, fiscal law, news, whatever happens. I will translate everything in English and I will try to explain to you as simple as possible. Thank you and see you in the next video.